Hi, it's Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO here in beautiful Montreal, welcoming you to another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. We're part of Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional community, and you can find us on Facebook. We bring you conversations about everything fractional that matters for fractional executives and businesses from coast to coast. Think of this as your go-to spot for real talk, practical wisdom, and strategies you can actually use, all without the corporate fluff and with plenty of Canadian content. Whether you're a fractional pro or a business in our great country of Canada and beyond, this conversation is for you. Grab your espresso and let's dive in. Welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. I'm your host and fractional CMO, Robert Mendelson, here in beautiful Montreal. And joining us today from just down the 401 in the GTA is Eden Spodek, longtime friend, fractional CMO and strategic advisor who has spent over 3 decades helping organizations navigate growth, digital transformation, and complexity. She's the founder and CEO of Spodek & Co., an executive leadership coach, and recently co-founded Co-Decision to help leaders build practical frameworks for AI governance. Today's episode is powered by the Fractional Pros Canada.ca directory. Scaling a business in Canada is hard enough without the high price tag of a full-time C-suite hire. Most CEOs I talk to need high-level strategy to break through. They don't want the overhead, the long-term risk, or the 6-month recruiting cycle. So when they ask for a shortcut, I head them over to the Fractional Pros Canada.ca directory, the curated hub for vetted high-tier fractional talent. Like Eden, experts who step in, find the gaps, and deliver ROI from day one. Instead of digging through generic job boards, savvy leaders go where the specialists are already gathered. Business leaders, find your next strategic partner on the directory at fractionalproscanada.ca. Eden, welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much, Robert. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Good.
So just for the listeners, you and I have known each other for a very long time. And I still remember back in the days, I think it's when you had Barganista.
Oh my goodness, yes.
and I was running my first online blinds e-commerce business. And so there was a connection there because Barganista was, well, a place to find bargains for shopping online, right? Something like that.
Well, it was actually about the convergence of social media, customer service, and shopping, fashion, things related.
Right. And so I remember you interviewed me for, I guess, I don't think it was a podcast. I think it was like a blog article that you wrote back in the day when blogging was the thing to do. It was all about blogging, right? That's how far back we're going.
Didn't we meet through AIMS, the Association of Internet Marketing and Sales? I was doing interviews for the blog. And it was great because I got to meet all kinds of great people, including one who then moved around the corner from me probably about 5 or 6 years later. And so it's been very interesting. We actually ended up teaching together for a while. So yeah, small world, and
that's great.
Keeps getting bigger and smaller at the same time.
Right. Is AIM still around?
I don't think it's been around for a very long time.
What was that?
Probably at least 15 years
or so. Was it the Association of Internet Marketing and the S? I don't remember what that stood for.
And sales.
Sales? That's what it was, right? It was based in Toronto. At some point, I think they're trying to expand the Canadian footprint. Anyway, interesting. So we're talking... I started that blinds business in 2005. So we're talking about a good 20 years back. Yeah.
Yeah. I got involved with them the fall of 2026, in 2006. And Barganista was a side hustle because I wanted to experiment with social media and blogging. And I didn't want to do what all my peers were doing, which was talking about what they were doing at work. So I was talking about things that we dealt with at work, but with a different type of application. So it became a side hustle.
So is it fair to say that you've been working as a solopreneur for a very long time?
About 17 years. So when we met, I was actually full time at an institutional investment company, one of the largest in the country. And I was the only person working in digital who didn't work in the IT department. I was actually part of corporate communications.
Right, which back in the day was almost groundbreaking because back then, right, digital, anything related to anything online was still part of IT back then, more or less.
And it created interesting times.
Yeah.
It was very interesting.
So you split off and you, for all intents and purposes, went fractional about 17 years ago and haven't looked back, and you've reinvented yourself many times along the way, kind of keeping up with the different trends. So we were talking about back in the day, blogging, social media was brand new, Facebook was brand new, all that fun stuff. If you look back over that last 20 odd years, what stands out to you as where we are now versus where we were, and for better and or for worse?
Oh, the first question's easy because I talk about it all the time. Because like you, you've probably seen going from analog to web to digital to social, and now we're in the AI phase. And there's a lot of parallels and similarities. I just look at the acceleration of AI in a similar way that I looked at social media and the other digital stages, except that it's just so much faster. The acceleration is faster, the adoption is quicker, and I think we have less of a handle on where it's going to lead. And I think there's also a lot more fear because we can't control it. With social media, we couldn't necessarily control the message. With AI, there's a lot more at stake than controlling a message.
So you would say that the biggest change has been as much as we didn't have control back in the day with AI, control has almost gone out the window now because of the pace of change, the lack of predictability, and who knows what tomorrow's going to bring.
I wouldn't say control's gone out the window at all. I would just say understanding the use and how to contain what we're doing with AI is relatively a new phenomena, and being able to anticipate what the full potential is still something uncertain. I mean, we talk about things like singularity. However, tech companies started firing large percentages of their workforce and then realized it wasn't necessarily the smartest thing to do, and that AI is not at that point. And the best way to use AI is to have a human in the loop. That's not changing anytime soon. It's rapidly changing, but what it's going to look like, I think, in terms of, the end game, I think it's far from our comprehension at this point, at least mine anyway. I'm not an expert on AI by any stretch.
It's interesting how, that term human in the loop is heard more and more these days in relation to AI. And kind of like if we go back before AI existed, it was always human in the lead. And then AI comes along and now it's human in the loop. And in my world, I think it still should be human in the lead. And because I don't view as let AI take some of this over and just stay in the loop. To me, it's like AI is another tool in the toolkit that the human should be directing on how to use it, where to use it, where not to use it, and still be leading it, and not just like ceding some control to AI in some areas.
I agree with you. I mean, I use the expression because human in the loop tends to be the common nomenclature. Human in the lead is critical. And I think we see that, a big part of my background is in communications and the content side of things. And there's so much backlash now against AI slop and people just being able to produce and produce and produce, but they're not producing quality. And I think they're often looking at AI. I think in some ways less so now than even a year and a half ago, but they're looking at AI as the be all end all to fill in all the gaps in my business that I can't do myself without necessarily needing to bring in a subject matter expert. And it's backfiring in a lot of places, in a lot of ways, because you still need a certain amount of expertise and knowledge to lead. I actually posted about an experience on LinkedIn and tried to make it extremely relatable when talking about a table that I upcycled over the last 2 weeks. So yeah, you definitely need the human in the lead. You need to have that vision of what it is that you want. You need to have the vision of how to get there. And sometimes AI can be a tool to help you. It can also make mistakes. It also, doesn't necessarily do a good job of giving you consistent types of responses or results. On the other hand, it can do some pretty awesome things if you know how to ask it to do what you want it to do and give it the raw material that it needs.
So what's your take on how important prompting is right now? When AI came out a couple of years ago, it was all about you need to learn how to structure your prompt properly to get the most optimal results. Nowadays, it seems that, I've moved away from that and I've been using Claude, using Opus, latest models. And I'm kind of running an experiment while I'm doing the work that I use it to help me with, where I've thrown all prompting principles out the window and I just talk to it as if it's my colleague, conversationally. And the results I'm getting, I'm sitting here saying to myself, I could probably get better results if I took some time to format my prompts a little bit better and put at least some effort into it. But honestly, the results I'm getting just from conversation back and forth with this thing are better than good enough.
And yeah, I'm like you. It's very funny. What was it, about 3 years ago? I started taking an online course about what was it, the University of Virginia through Coursera on taught by an engineer about prompting for AI. It is so, and how to code and do things to get what you need from it. And at that time, what we were trying to get in terms of the output was extremely rudimentary, where now it's progressed so much. I think the more we almost can treat it like a partner in some ways, the more it gets to know you and gets to understand. I think the downside of that, and we tend to see that, and I'm not an expert by any stretch on any specific LLM, and I float around, but I see one of the things that we get is that, ChatGPT, for example, always wants to please. And I find Claude is more inquisitive. I haven't done this with ChatGPT and any of the tools within the OpenAI ecosystem, but I do it with Claude, is putting in guardrails about wanting it to challenge me and doing things like pre-mortems after I put something together and help to find the holes, find the problems, take a marketing strategy and say, what's not going to work here in 6 months? Tell me now, let's fix it before we finalize it, and work and just have that conversation. And, it makes mistakes. I'm not saying it's perfect. I've seen all kinds of errors. I've, done work in co-work where I'll have it work in an Excel doc and do some research, and I'll say, don't give me any responses you can't verify. And it'll say unknown, unknown, unknown. And I just have to keep on asking until it fills in most of the cells, and then do some checking to make sure what I have is correct. Because you can't, trust, I think we're going to see or mistrust is something that that's escalating right now.
Yeah, I feel like in the larger context of social media and AI and basically everything coming out of our screens right now, the thing that will save humanity, if I could be overly dramatic, the thing that will save humanity is humanity to not forget that you need to question everything right now. You got to ask AI to verify. You've got to look at everything you're seeing on social media with like, is that real? Who produced it? It's the same as, and it's no different from before all this technology stuff and this internet thing started. Think back to newspapers and articles in newspapers, and a new study comes out that says, smoking is great for you, right? And, ask, who's behind that study? Things like that. So the fundamentals haven't changed.
No.
But I feel like we're just getting lazier because it's easier to get lazy, and we're just accepting things at face value more. And that's ultimately the slippery slope that will lead us all into ruin.
I agree. I think media savviness is more important now than it has been. And yet, I think we talk about it in different ways, but I don't know how many people, and when I say people, I'm meaning, of all ages, how many people are actually critically thinking anymore. And there's been studies done, about younger generations that if they're not using their critical thinking skills, they're losing it. And we're seeing with Gen Zs or Gen Z, I like to throw the Canadian side of that in there. They are the first generation that history has shown that there's actually been cognitive decline because of a lack of critical thinking. It's reparable. However, if they're not thinking for themselves, their capacity will decline, and that's going to be a problem. And then their media savviness will decline and everything that goes along with it. And they're going to be, I'm not saying this out of fear for humanity quite yet, but I think we have to, your point is important and well taken. We have to be very careful, and it's very important to have that human in the lead and maintain our human judgment. I don't know if you happen to see, and I don't expect you to because the algorithms on LinkedIn are so wonky anyway. But was it about a month ago? Try to write at least once a week and post on LinkedIn. There was, what's the thing? Oh, I got really nervous because I started to see someone I know who I trust and is doing things with the best intentions, putting together a tool for people who's actually a former, well, I guess probably a dual citizen living in the US now from here. And he put together a guide that would help US voters in whatever their LLM of choice is, be able to sift through and evaluate different political candidates. Is there really a way to do that bias-free, even with the best of intentions? I don't know. And then is there a way, how much or how many people are consuming information about important decisions like an election? And we know that our political leaders globally have become politics and leadership has become a really difficult situation globally. How many people aren't critically thinking and they're just being fed whatever's coming to them from LLMs and social media and their whomever neighbors and whatever? And then there's the other side where you can actually, I think we're going to see marketers who are involved in political campaigns actually strategizing around how to get the answers they want to come out of what individuals are prompting and asking the LLMs for.
I think that's already happening. I think it's too late.
Well, that's what I mean. It's happening, right? But what is that saying?
Yeah.
I mean, the light bulb went on when I saw this, and I don't want to out him, but when I saw his post and what he was doing, and it was like, yes, I know it's happening, but it's the misuses are what scares me.
So
around that.
And confession, I did not see your article on LinkedIn, and the confession is I have been trying to spend less and less time on all social media. As much as I need to be on it for, supporting and growing the Fractional Pros Canada community with our Facebook group with over 1,000 people in it. I've got a lot of followers on LinkedIn. But I don't like spending time on it more and more for all the reasons that everybody knows. And even LinkedIn now, there's so much slop on there. And the algorithms again are just taking over. And I'm trying to, this past weekend, I was up in the country at my girlfriend's, as we say here in Quebec, chalet. And it was the first time, and I honestly don't remember how long, where for 48 consecutive hours, I did not open my laptop a single time. And I really hardly looked at my phone at all. And it was such a bizarre experience, and that's where you realize that the addiction is real. The things that used to be natural the way I was, I don't know, 5-10 years ago are gone out the window. I can barely sit through a 2-hour movie anymore, like in a theater. It's like, it's just too long. I can't do it. It needs to be 48 minutes.
You sound like my significant other. And it's very funny because I can watch a movie in the theater. It's much harder for me at home because in the theater, my phone is in my purse.
Right.
And it's nowhere near me. And it drives me nuts to see people on their phones in the theater. That's a whole other issue. I don't know about you, and maybe this past weekend will help. I've really taken to trying not to go into my office at all, at least one day over the weekend. And if I do, I try to avoid the technology in there. So I'll see screens because I'll watch, movie or TV or something, but I try and stay away from social media, email, often people will not get a response from me if they email me over the weekend. And I used to have this, we're in the BlackBerry generation, our thumbs are here and somebody's writing us, we gotta write back. I'm so far removed from that now. And I understand, and it's really freeing. So I feel there's always this dichotomy between the technology and the, getting away from technology.
Yeah, the tension has always been there, but it's more accentuated now. And the word toxic is more present in the formula now than ever before.
Sadly, but I think there's still a lot of good. I don't want to make this a whole doomsday conversation. There is a lot of good. I think what we're seeing, though, is those who are stepping away from using it all the time are people like you and I who were heavily involved in it, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're using it. It's important. We have a good understanding. We're not building our lives around it as much as we were before. We're learning to stop and enjoy the finer things.
I'm going on a cruise in a few months, and it's a 7-day, and I'm having this weird, this is so bizarre. I'm having this weird feeling, this little voice in me saying, you should try reading like a real paper book on that cruise. Not reading your phone, not reading the Kindle, but an actual book that, has pages, doesn't run on battery and needs no Wi-Fi. And it's such a bizarre thing that I have this thought in my head because, this used to be just natural and now it's a bizarre, weird thing. And it's just disturbing on so many levels. Just that observation alone is like, wow, what's going on here? Anyway.
I still have books. I read mostly ebooks or audiobooks, but I do. And fiction, I like to actually have a book in hand. I find most of the time, if it's business or professional development related, I actually prefer the digital, which is interesting. I want to know what happens though when you try to read a book. When you go away, you might want to practice before you leave.
I want to practice, and the first time I try to swipe a page to turn it and realize, oh wait, that doesn't work on this. Yeah.
No.
Can't.
And you just
double click on the word to get the dictionary definition. No feature there.
I bet though your eyes will feel better.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
I bet they'll feel better. It's really interesting that you say that about vacation because we were in Italy for 2 weeks in April. And I took a ton of pictures and some video, and I don't like to travel and post online. And it was really funny because I'd go back to the Airbnb at, times, and I'd start looking through Instagram and seeing people I knew who were in Italy and they're planning their trips. And I'm talking, oh, we were just there or whatever. And I thought, I'm going to come home and then I'll post some things. To this day, I have not posted one photo online. And I almost feel it's like it's something special that I don't necessarily feel the need to share with the world.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing because I would never have my life online. But I did have a lot of personal things and experiences shared online in different ways over the last 25, 30 years. And now I just feel like I want to keep that away from the world. They don't need to see it.
Yeah. I used to post a lot of pictures and stuff when I'd go on vacation, and I've slowly moved into your camp where as I'm getting out my phone to post, it's like, why are you doing this? Like, why do you need to share this with the world? And there are times where I see something spectacular And so the first thing is like, oh my God, this is awesome. And maybe you're alone or with one other person. And you're like, you're so excited. You just want to tell everybody. And now it's easy to do because you whip out the phone, you post it on Facebook and Instagram, you can tell everybody, but it's not the same as telling everybody. And the dynamic has changed, and that's the new world we're in. So I find myself catching myself now, like, is this really going to make you feel better, like you told the world, or is this just you? As they say, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. Are you just helping to enrich the platform that you're about to engage with, and they win again and you lose again, and
Yeah. Speaking of that, do you have any idea how to get a hold of anybody at the former Flickr? I can't tell you how many private photos I have there that I can no longer access. Yeah.
Well, there you go. You were the product.
Someone can go and hack away. I don't think anybody can see them unless they get behind the scenes, but hey.
Well, there's AI now with agents, billions of agents hacking as we speak. So watch out.
I know someone's going to go look. Oh, well,
yeah.
They'll get, some photos of little kids that are now grown men.
Right. Well, we're all doomed. But that being said, I am very optimistic. I am a proponent of AI and all technology. So as we try to shift this conversation back to something other than living with technology, was the theme of the last 20 minutes. Human-centered. We've talked a lot about that. And you highlight that as a core pillar of what you're doing right now, your digital consultancy and your coaching. And a lot of businesses, a lot of CEOs hear the words human-centered. They hear the word culture, and, they think, yeah, that's nice, but how's that going to increase my bottom line? Let's get some AI in here to increase efficiency. Maybe I can cut a few heads. The heads I have, I can make them more productive. How do you have that conversation with CEOs and the business leaders and make the case for why, yes, I know it's tempting to jump right on the AI, but you got to make sure you take care of the people first?
Ooh, I know. I had coffee today with somebody, and this is her very area of expertise. Full disclosure, it's not mine. The human side of things are critical. And actually, I have something interesting to share if you'll indulge me in a minute. But I met with somebody who is a CPA by education and works on the HR side corporate culture, and has shown clients and is working more and more on detailing the actual ROI of healthy, low turnover corporate culture and the actual cost of high turnover to a company's bottom line, because it's often something that gets ignored. And her stance is that the culture is something that starts on day one with the leader of the organization, whether it's a company of one or a company of many. So it's very interesting. So I'm really excited and looking forward to seeing more of the data that she brings from that.
Well, that's interesting. And, we must never forget the cost of replacing an employee is astronomically high. You have the whole hiring process, which may involve dollars, may not, but it takes a lot of time. Then there's the onboarding, the integration, the cultural fit and adjustment, all that stuff. And if it doesn't work out, which there's a percentage, I don't know what it is, where it doesn't, you got to rinse, repeat. So high cost, no question about it, and something that shouldn't be overlooked. What was the other tidbit you wanted to share that was
it's just interesting. It's more about me. So one of the things I did was I've created an agent to give me a meeting brief about people. So I just can go and say, I'm meeting with Robert today. What can you tell me about him? Because I don't know him. And then I thought I'd flip the switch today and I'd ask it, well, if the person I'm meeting with was asking about me, what would they say? And so it detailed all these things. And I find this really interesting because there's always, I don't know about you, there's always people trying to put me into a box. And when you've been in the workforce for over 30 years, being in a box is not an easy thing necessarily, especially if you're somebody who likes to grow and likes change. I wouldn't say my business has pivoted that much over the years until the last 3 years, unless you count COVID, but COVID was more of sort of transitioning into the craziness that was lockdown. But this is what it said, so this is coming from an agent in ChatGPT. So it's saying, okay, but what does Eden actually do? I'd probably answer, quote unquote, or quote, sorry, she helps people and organizations navigate change by connecting communication, technology, education, and human behavior. And she's particularly good at seeing what's coming before everyone has figured out what to call it. I found that really fascinating because I have never spoken about myself that way. It's so interesting, working with the agents. And I asked something that it wasn't even really prompted or programmed to do. I guess prompted, yes, but not really coded to do. So it's interesting, but there's always that human tech kind of combination in there.
So do you find it was right? Is it on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it right on? Is it a 10?
I would say it's probably a 9. I find it would be, or maybe an 8. I think it would be pretty bold and heavy-handed of me, and I don't think I'm quite there to say I'm particularly good at seeing what's coming before everyone has figured out what to call it. That might be quite presumptuous, but I think in terms of being good at seeing what's coming before it hits mainstream, perhaps.
So that begs the question, do you see anything coming before it's going to hit mainstream that you can give us a heads up on here?
No, because I think we're in the AI is the big tech now, and I think it's going to be I think that the tricky thing now is seeing where all this AI disclosure on content is going to go. There's, people are not happy at the moment.
Yeah, people are not happy. So what is going to happen with that, and how do we manage the messaging that is going out? If we're a business, if we're a fractional, how do we cut through the noise, which, there's more noise than ever now, of course, and there's so many more channels that we need to communicate through than when you and I started out 20 years ago, where it was very limited and very narrowly focused. How do you get a handle on the messaging that you want to get out there with everything going on?
It's really tricky, and I can't say that I've mastered it. I'm studying it, and I would say it changes constantly. This may sound counterintuitive to what you've just said. I actually, when working with clients, have become an advocate of have an account on all the channels just so nobody else takes your name, kind of going back to 25 years ago, doing that.
Claim
but
the
it doesn't mean claim the name, but you don't have to be active there. Find where you're still communicating with prospective clients and customers. So find that place where they spend their time that you have capacity to communicate with them on, and you can be consistently paying attention to what's happening there. And then the other side of it is look at all the places that might be talking about you. So look at directories, look at what LLMs are saying about you, and make sure there's messaging that speaks to who you are and what you do that's available to those sources that are searching for that information. Because the other thing is, especially the more and more we see guardrails, and a lot of these guardrails to a lesser extent or greater extent are being built into the tools now. It's like, if you can't verify what you're finding, don't tell the user something and present it as fact. So the more places that you are with a consistent message, the better. I belong to Women Business Enterprise of Canada. There is a closed database. Okay. And I am friends with, am colleagues with, am client of, and marketing, partner of, and business advisor, whatever, of several. And I can't tell you how many have come to me saying, I'm looking for somebody in the community who can do X. And I'll say, oh, I know so-and-so can do it. Well, I searched for that and couldn't find anybody. So I'll make the connection. And the organization itself will make those connections. But the responsibility is actually with the individual business to make sure their listings are up to date. in all of these places. And I've actually, I don't know if you know Chris Bryce. Do you know Chris Bryce of Dot Fusion
Does
at
not ring
all?
a bell.
He's based here in Toronto also. So he builds headless CMSs and does a lot of research in the AI search space. Primarily, he works for commercial real estate. That's his prime niche, or his company's prime niche. They're B Corp. Have a look. And he's also recently talked a lot about the value of Clutch, which a dear friend of mine swears by because it's a verified place where people put testimonials about your business, and there is more control about what's being said about you because they're all vetted. And apparently that's something that in, testing has scored well. So I'm paying attention. I'm not putting all my eggs in any one basket, but I'm paying attention to places that are like the low hanging fruit where people are spending their time and just, making sure the messages are right, while noting I'm the shoemaker's child because I have a lot to do on my own storefront. But that's a whole other discussion for another day.
Right. Well,
How do you
when I had my blinds business, I looked around how many blinds I actually have on the windows here. I'm in the shoemaker's daughter camp with you. But what you said before, I've heard that somewhere before. Our site has vetted reviews by real customers. You can trust us. Where have I heard that before? The skeptic in me is like, okay, yeah.
A lot of places, and a lot of them are BS, and I get that. Apparently, I'm telling you third party, because Clutch, I don't know if you've ever been asked to write a review on Clutch or asked anybody to write a review on Clutch. It's a lot of work. No one's going to spend their time writing a review unless they really detest you or they really love you. And Clutch Review has a review process. I'm sure it's automated, whatever, that there is a process there. It's much more intricate than what Google's doing. And it's a much deeper testimonial. And then there's different levels. You can have a free Clutch account if you're a business. You can have a paid Clutch. Anyway, this is not an ad for Clutch.
Right.
I'm sharing with you what I have heard from others. And I also know that whether it's public or private, if your audience is searching in certain places and they're not finding you in the way that you want to be spoken about, they're either not going to find you at all or they're going to find the wrong person. Even that LLM example I was sharing in terms of the executive brief, the meeting briefing, I did one for a prospective client before I met her. And I said, oh, tell me about this thing. And she said, oh, that's really old. Where'd you get that? It must be on my LinkedIn. I should expunge it. I haven't done that in 20 years. But it came across as, I think she was teaching at Sheridan College. And she said, I haven't done that since I don't know, what was it, 2017? So almost 10 years.
Well, it comes back to we were talking about fundamentals. The basics don't change. I've had other guests on the pod here where, and if listeners know, I don't like to do prep. I rarely ever do prep with guests. I just say, hey, let's find a date. Let's get on. I don't want to have the pre-conversation that kind of ruins the spontaneity that I like to have. So if I have somebody on that I don't really know, first thing I do is head to LinkedIn and download whatever that thing downloads and use that to help prep the questions. And it's happened a couple of times where, I start asking about things. They're like, oh, I haven't been doing that for 5 years. I really need to update the LinkedIn. So yeah, the basics are there. I'm guilty of it too. I don't look at my LinkedIn profile that often. Like I should. There's definitely things I could update there. So I think it comes back to us being lazy humans once again. And I'm definitely one of those. So I'm not pointing the finger at others. I'm pointing it squarely at myself.
Well, is it lazy, or is it using your work time to do work for clients? Or, is it not wanting to work the way we were working 25, 30 years ago when you had to launch a website on the day that you said it was going to go live, even if it meant staying up all night to do it? And I've been there many times.
Yep.
And I was explaining that to my, late 30-something neighbor a week ago. who's a lawyer and just didn't believe that we used to work nights. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I worked in web. You don't tell me about that.
Right.
And I mean, it was just these arbitrary things. And I think especially since 2020, we've started to learn that, life is short. Stop and smell the roses. Work isn't everything. We work hard. Like, people say to me, are you thinking about retiring? I'm like, it crosses my mind, but I have zero interest,
Right.
and, I will be going way past this arbitrary retirement age. And I'm, working on new ventures now. So it's just who I am, but at the same time, I take me time. I take my weekends off. I try to avoid the screen on at least one day every weekend. And I try when I would say 6 nights out of 7, I'm typically finished at the computer on work things by between 5 and 6:30 every night. And I don't start first thing in the morning. I do me time then too. I want to get a little exercise and take my time because life's short. I missed a lot of time with my kids. I don't know, if you have kids at all. And
Yep, definitely. And on the retirement thing, sometimes I get into that discussion with somebody, and they're like, "So, Robert, retirement, what's your number?" Right? Everybody's got a number. I'm like, 98. They're like, 98 million? I'm like, no, 98 years old. That's when I'm planning to retire.
I hear you. And I don't mean to alienate people who say, "Oh my goodness, they're talking about retirement. We're 35 here. Why are they thinking about that?" But, it comes up, and it's something you have to think about, and maybe I fear AI less because I don't feel like it's going to take my job away in 5 years. Because if it does, I don't care. Like, will I care? But I'll care for my kids. I'll care for my future grandchildren if I have any, but I'm not sitting in that fear zone just yet. I think there's a lot of other things that humans are too resilient, and there's a lot of other things that we could be doing that are apart from what AI can do for us.
So,
or with us.
You mentioned that your latest reinvention of yourself goes back about 3 years. Is that the company, your venture called Co-Decision? Is that what we're talking about? Or is this something different?
No. Co-Decision is not even live yet. It almost is. And that started involving me January of this year. It was an idea that my partner in the business, it's both of our companies are partnering to power this. And it's something that he had thought about and then talked to me about. And it took me a little while to get my head around whether or not I wanted to be involved. So that's this year. But I think it's more in terms of wanting to focus for me on the fractional side of things. I went back to school and became an executive and leadership coach, certified executive and leadership coach. And then over the past 2 years, I've just decided I want to stop managing a team that at one point was up to like 13 people all in, and bring it back and just, it's almost sole proprietor. It is sole proprietor, always has, but I mean, it's almost solo practice, not entirely. And the work that I do, and there's a lot of collaborative work, isn't with people I employ or subcontract. It's with other business owners, and we partner.
Interesting.
So that's more of it. Yeah, I'm just, to be quite frank, I love working with other people. I just got tired of the HR side of things. And it was really sucking up my energy from the things I enjoyed doing.
People problems.
Yeah.
Comes with people. That's just how it works.
Well, yeah, but you're not having to deal with legal issues and HR issues and, all the things that go along with it. And performance reviews and all that.
I'm curious you got certified as an executive coach while, continuing to work as a fractional CMO in other capacities for a lot of fractionals get that question sometimes. Hey, Robert, I'm thinking of going fractional, or hey, Robert, I've been a fractional for a year or two. Fractional CMO, for example, right? Fill in your favorite CFO, COO, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm struggling a little bit to find clients. I'm thinking of adding to my portfolio. Becoming an executive coach. What do you think? Is that a good idea as kind of like a second stream of income? So you've kind of gone down that path. Any wisdom to share on that?
Well, I didn't really do it as a second stream of income. I guess initially when I thought about it, I was thinking about it that way, but I really haven't developed it that way. And it was kind of a weird coincidence. I do a lot of mentoring and a lot of advising, and I was always very impressed by the people that I was relying on as business coaches and advisors. And I started working with them probably about over the last 10 years. I started with business coaches and advisors myself. And I thought, I can do a lot of this. And I like to teach. And I came out of 5 years of content creating and teaching. Actually, another member of Fractional Pros was on the certificate program team that I was on. That's Andrew. Why all of a sudden is his last name escaping? Andrew Jenkins. Sorry,
okay, yes.
He's still teaching. Yeah. I did it for 5 years, but I was one of the original co-creators of a certificate program at UT School of Continuing Studies, taught it for 5 years. So I was teaching and helping and mentoring people anyway. I'm currently mentoring with two not-for-profits for women business owners across Canada. So I actually am working with 4 different people concurrently right now. And it was just something that came naturally. And I find coaching helps me improve those skills, but it's also something that I always use in my marketing and digital strategy and any of the business side of things. It's become a really important piece. And in another capacity, and it's too premature to share that with you, but I'm working on another project right now that has to do with women business owners and professional development that will involve coaching and advising. So that we're hoping will come either late this year or early next year.
So the great question.
So it was a little different. My trajectory.
I love different. You're a great person to ask this, because I'm often curious about this, and there's not a lot of people who have the right blend of experience to ask this. So again, looking back over the last 20 odd years, how have you seen women and their roles in the fractional world, maybe in the business leader world with technology? Right back in the day, in the early 2000s, it was a heavily male-dominated space. I would say I saw more women emerge as content creators in the early days. I'm sure that landscape has evolved, but I don't really have insights into that. You might. What can you share on that as to where the place of women has evolved in the whole technology sphere, the AI and everything, all that fun stuff?
I wish I had all the answers for you. I can tell you what I had. So about a year ago, I was actually asked to speak at a conference on the topic, and I was running a breakout session for women. It was a conference for women business owners and leaders, and I did a breakout session about AI and had different subject matter experts in different verticals running each of the tables. And to lead into small discussions, I did an overview of where are we with AI in business? What does the North American landscape look like within that? What does the Canadian landscape look like within that? And where do women fit? And what was really interesting is, in general, and I don't remember the numbers, although the trends I don't think have changed much since then, I could be mistaken, was that Canada, as we know, was lagging the US. Adoption was higher there than here. In general, males were further along the adoption curve, or businesses owned by men were further along the adoption curve than women-owned businesses, except when it came to tech. And that's where women were leading. So it's very interesting, but I know in terms of the people who are really researching and studying this, and I can't say I'm one of those, that there is a lot of concern about the amount of gender bias that's built into AI right now and LLMs. So, I don't really have an answer, but I am keeping up with the stats. And I think I will be speaking at another conference or two, maybe three this fall, and I'll probably update the stats. I had to do an update in March again because I did a virtual workshop that was related, but I don't have them right now. But it is something I've looked at, and it's interesting because I know some very successful women in Canada who are doing some really interesting leading work in the space and keeping an eye. But I tend not to compare as much. I don't really look and say, oh, guys are doing this, we're doing that. I just kind of go and do my thing. And just, if that helps. It's a tricky thing. I'm the mother of two sons. I don't have any I have what I call my bonus daughters, which are their significant others. But, and I really feel it's important to support women-owned businesses. And I know that we're behind in a lot of ways. And I've had some very interesting conversations with men who primarily are in marketing or tech. I'm part of this small group of people who meets every other Wednesday in person, and we have conversations. And there's really only two women who ever participate. I'm there almost every time. The other one's there sometimes. And it was a real eye-opener for the men when I started explaining some of the challenges that women business leaders and women-owned businesses have, and they just had no idea. And the ones who have daughters were just shell-shocked and were like, oh my goodness, we had no idea. Thanks for letting us know.
I think maybe we should do a podcast on that topic to help inform.
I'm there, and I'll update my stats for you. I'll even give you those, bring the handouts.
Let's get that on the calendar. I think we should do that. I think that'd be valuable. As you're talking, I'm reflecting about how many women are in the Fractional Pros Canada community. We have about 1,700 members. I could go and look at I can't look at the numbers. I never ask people when you're filling out the form, are you male or female? We don't do that. I could ask
or how AI. Do you identify? Yeah.
I could ask AI, based on the first names, give me what you think, but that wouldn't be totally accurate. It would give some sense, but just anecdotally from the people I see in the community, I don't know if it's 50-50, but I would guess it's pretty close. There's a lot of women. It's not like my whiskey club here in Montreal that I go to every month to do a tasting where there's, 25 guys in the room and 2 or 3 women. It's not that at all. It's unfortunately, I wish, I'm sure there's more women whiskey drinkers out there too. Maybe they just don't know about the club. I don't know, but that's a whole other discussion.
And I have no clue. I don't drink, so I don't even know.
All right,
I rarely drink. Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And actually, I would imagine you have I don't know what the breakdown is either. And I know I've attended 2 meetings so far. I haven't noticed a huge imbalance. There's a significant percentage of women. They are smart, capable, sharing people. And I've found that the men who I've met, are the same. I haven't noticed if there are people that, are non-binary or anything. So I don't want to discount anybody who fits outside the binary. However, it seems like a relatively balanced and not necessarily reflective of who's in the workforce. But I do think that information and opinions and the way that we experience things can definitely be shaped by our gender.
Yeah. And that's why I'm a big proponent of women. I'm probably more feminist than most of my male friends because I like hearing other voices and I like hearing female voices. It just it fills that void of all the stuff I'm used to hearing. All the old white men running the show, as they say. You look at all the political leaders up and down the spectrum, and so I'm all for it. So I'd love to get more insights.
It changes. Like if you look at the younger, the younger millennials and the Gen Zs that are already in the workforce, it's not I'm a guy, I can't report to a woman. Like they don't, for the most part, people just are people working together and they report to whoever's earned the position and they hopefully show respect for the person and they work collaboratively together, and it doesn't matter. But, I think those of us who've been around a little longer were conditioned otherwise.
Yeah.
So big time.
So much. So much. All right. Before we get into my mother issues, let's stop going down that road. And let's wrap this up with our last question we ask all our guests here on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. So Eden, you could put one message on a billboard for millions of business leaders and fractionals to see every day as they drive by it on the highway of life. What would that one message be?
Ooh, you think I would have prepared this better. Be kind.
Be kind. So simple. So great.
The world would be a much better place. Doesn't speak to marketing or being a fractional specifically, but I just think it would solve a lot of problems.
I think it speaks to everything, and you could definitely relate it to marketing as well and everything as well. So be kind. Be kind of their marketers. Stop telling us what our problems are and how we're going to solve them when they're made up problems.
Ask real people what their real problems are and then help them solve them.
There we go. All right. Eden, thanks so much for joining. Everybody's tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please do not hesitate to go and like and follow on wherever you're listening to this or watching this. Do appreciate that. And Eden, thanks again. I'm glad we finally got to connect here on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. If you're a fractional professional based in Canada, we'd love to have you join us in the Fractional Pros Canada Facebook group, the home for Canada's fractional community. It's where Canadian fractional executives connect, share insights, and help each other succeed. Until next time, I'm Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO. May your impact be full-time, even if your hours are fractional.